Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu, and I'm back with another episode of Spoiler Sundays. Spoiler Sundays is the time of the week where I take a look at all of the spoilers that we got revealed and, well, talk about them. BT10 is going to be coming to a close rather shortly, probably within the next week, just because we already know, as of this video and the cards in this video, about 75 to 85% of the set. So there's not that much left to be spoiled, and the next big thing is going to be on the horizon, and we already know what that's going to be in the form of EX03 about Dragon's Roar, so it's going to be a set about primarily Dragon-type Digimon. But with all that said and done, let's just get into the spoilers that we have, because we still have a hefty chunk of spoilers to go over. First up, we have a new version of Tinkermon. So Tinkermon is a yellow level 3 Digimon, just like all of her other incarnations, and this Digimon has a nice on-play ability where one of your opponent's level 5 or lower Digimon gains security attack -1 until the end of the opponent's next turn, so it's just applying that security attack -1 debuff that Venusmon really seems to be enjoying and wants to play into, so this is a good card to complement that, on top of a good card to use in combination with the old Petermon all the way back from BT01 to possibly try to take advantage of all of the different Tinkermons that we have in the game. Next, we have a new version of Darkknightmon. This version of Darkknightmon is a yellow level 4 Digimon with the nice inheritable ability of when attacking once per turn, one of the opponent's Digimon gains security attack -1 until the end of the opponent's next turn. So this is, again, trying to interact with that Venusmon sub-theme on having a constant way to try to give the opponent's Digimon security attack -1 to trigger Venusmon's ability and to keep the opponent's Digimon from really doing much of anything. So this is very similar to how blue likes to stunlock the opponent's Digimon. This is kind of just yellow's interpretation or version of it with this security attack -1 debuff. Next, we have Griffinmon. So Griffinmon is going to be a level 6 Digimon in the color combination of yellow and green. So yellow and green hasn't seen a whole lot of synergy, but it's nice to see that we get a card to try to support that, even though it is a vanilla card and it doesn't have any abilities, it just has some slightly increased stats. Next up, we have Blasmon. So Blasmon is going to be a purple level 5 Digimon with the when attacking ability where you get to trash the top 3 cards of your deck. So that's just kind of the purple thing that it wants to be doing, is fill up your trash as quickly as it possibly can. So this just plays into a lot of purple strategies. Then it also has a nice on delete ability where if you have 10 or more cards in your trash, then you get to play one Beelzemon from your trash for free. So this is really, really powerful just because a free level 6 can do lots of different things, especially since we know that we want to have cards on our field in order to use for the DigiXross ability. So even though this is a Bagra army card, this still has lots of usability in various different decks. This has some really good synergy in a lot of different decks, making it a pretty decent card to think about utilizing. Mainly, it looks like it wants to be played with the Beelzemon deck or in the Cross Hearts deck to try to set up a Beelzemon. And speaking of Beelzemon, we actually have a new version of Beelzemon. So this version of Beelzemon is going to be a Cross Hearts, so it obviously wants to be played with the Cross Hearts because we already had Cross 5B spoiled, which wanted to include the use of Beelzemon. So what this Beelzemon is doing is he's a purple level 6 Digimon, evos for 3 off of a level 5 purple, or the alternative digivolution condition is he could digivolve for 3 on top of a level 5 with Cross Hearts in its trait. Then he has an on-play ability and when digivolving ability where you get to trash the top 3 cards of your deck, and then for every 10 cards in your trash, you get to delete one of the opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon. So this kind of wants to be played in combination with Blasmon to be able to play him for free to get that on-play ability off, on top of the fact that if we do go up the chain, then his when digivolving ability will also trigger this ability to just try to remove the opponent's Digimon, which is something Beelzemon has done in the past. And then on top of all of that, he's actually a really decent card to use as a good inheritable for our level 7s or underneath our Cross Hearts cards that want to use Beelzemon, because his inheritable ability states that during the end of the attack once per turn, you get to gain 1 memory for every 10 cards in your trash. Obviously, the Cross Hearts deck will just passively accumulate 10 cards, but in a more dedicated purple deck, you're trying to force that ability to go off and force having 10 or more cards into your trash, so it's a little bit easier to use in a more Beelzemon-focused deck, but it's still a good card to use for the Cross Hearts deck as well, adding extra usability and flexibility to what we could do with this card. And speaking of Cross 5B, we actually have Shoutmon Cross 4B. So Shoutmon Cross 4B is going to be a level 5 Digimon in the color combination of red and purple, and he could also digivolve on top of red or purple level 4s for 3, which is about average. Then on top of that, he has the Armor Purge ability, so when he gets deleted, he'll basically revert back to whatever's underneath him, with it the on-play and when digivolving ability, where you get to place one Digimon with crosshearts in its traits from your hand or tamer onto the bottom of this Digimon's digivolution source. Then, when this Digimon has Beelzemon in its digivolution source, you get to return 2 cards with crosshearts from your trait back to your hand. So when using this card, it's just an easy way to try to shove Beelzemon underneath to be able to get Beelzemon's inheritable ability off, but the fact that it is also leaning in a little bit more towards the purple side of things by allowing us to return cards back to our hand is still really nice, so that way we could try to reuse our cards when we're trying to fill up our trash. Then on top of all of that, this card has the DigiXross 2 ability, where we could reduce his on-play cost by utilizing Shoutmon Cross 4 and a Beelzemon. Next, we have a new option card in the form of Oblivion Cannon. So Oblivion Cannon is going to be a brand new purple Gaia Force, except this is a little bit more closer to Gaia Force than some of the other purple options that we had before. So this obviously has some really good synergy with the Beelzemon deck, because the Beelzemon deck is about self-milling, where when this card is trashed from your deck, then you get to return this card to your hand, so that way it's not actually being trashed, and you actually have the availability to want to try to use this card instead of trying to add this card from your trash back into your hand. Then it has the main ability where we get to delete one of the opponent's level 6 or lower Digimon. Then if we have 10 or more cards in our trash, then we get to add 1 to the maximum level of Digimon chosen by this ability. So essentially on base, it'll delete a level 6 or lower, so it's basically a more expensive fly bullet, but as long as we have 10 or more cards in our trash, then it'll hit a level 7 and below, which is basically almost any Digimon in the game. So the only thing you have to keep aware of is the fact that right now we do have Digimon that don't have levels, so this won't affect any of those, but for the most part, outside of that D-Reaper deck, it'll hit almost anything you want in the game, with the dangerous security ability of activating its main, making it, for all intents and purposes, just as good as Gaia Force for what purple is trying to do. Next, we have Shoutmon. So Shoutmon is going to be a yellow level 4 Digimon. Its stats are very comparable to Numamon and that stat line, where it's just 3 to hard play, 1 to Evo, and 3000 DP, just acting as a really good card to just hard play and start climbing the stages, or cheaply digivolve and go up the stages that way. Next, we have Weddenmon. So Weddenmon is going to be a level 5 yellow Digimon, and it's going to follow in the same footsteps as the Blasmon stat line, where it's just 7 to hard play, 2 to Evo, and 8000 DP. So if we need to use it as an aggressive level 5, the 8000 DP is a little bit stronger than some of the other level 5s, so it's a really good card to want to try to aggress with, although right now might not be the best time to aggress with your level 5s, unless you can make them even stronger, just because we did get an influx of a lot of level 5s with 8000 DP. But what you primarily are going to be using this card for is the cheaper evolution cost of evoing for 2, so that way you could climb the stages quickly and efficiently. Next, we have Darkknightmon X Antibody. So Darkknightmon X Antibody is going to be a level 6 Digimon in the color combination of black and purple, and he could digivolve off of a black and purple level 5 for 5. So that seems really expensive, but obviously this card wants to be used in the Dark Knight deck, where you could digivolve him alternatively for 4 on top of a Darkknightmon. Then he has a nice when digivolving ability, where you get to return a black or purple Digimon card other than Darkknightmon X Antibody from your trash to your hand. Then, if this Digimon has a Darkknightmon or X Antibody in its digivolution source, then you get to delete one of their tamer and unsuspend this Digimon. So this is a very aggressive card in my perspective, where you want to try to swing with your Darkknightmon. Then if your Darkknightmon lives, digivolve into Darkknightmon X Antibody to be able to get its when digivolving ability to possibly pass the turn and end the turn on. Then on top of that, he has a nice on delete ability, where you get to play one Darkknightmon from your trash for free, further incentivizing the fact that you want to be aggressive with your Darkknightmon, so that way if they're trying to actually attack into this, then you still get that Darkknightmon body back, and both of our Darkknightmons have some really good on-play abilities that we want to try to take advantage of. Next up, we have a new version of Mushroomon, and this time Mushroomon is taking on the stat line of those value-efficient vanilla cards. So his stat line is just your classic 2 to hard play, 0 to evo, 3000 DP, making him just a good card to use overall, especially since he does have vegetation in his type, and we already know that green wants to be playing with fairies and vegetations. And speaking of vegetations, next we have a new version of Palmon. So this new version of Palmon is going to be a level 3 green Digimon with the on-play ability where we get to look at the top 4 cards of our deck and add 1 card that contains a plant or vegetation in its traits and 1 card with fairy in its traits from among them and put it into our hands, then the rest go to the bottom. So this is just going to be the dedicated digger for that fairy and vegetation deck. And speaking of more vegetations, next we have Red Vegiemon. So Red Vegiemon is going to be a level 4 green Digimon that's following in the same footsteps as Numamon in terms of a cheap and efficient stat line. So its stats are just 3 to hard play, 1 to evo, 3000 DP, just acting as another tempo efficient vanilla card. Next up, we have Shoutmon King version. So Shoutmon King version actually is a level 4 red Digimon, where all of the other Shoutmons were level 3 red Digimons. So that's a big difference, and this card is also going to be able to be treated as a Shoutmon, well, because he is a Shoutmon. And then he has the nice on-play ability where you get to return 1 card with his DigiXross requirements from your trash back to your hand, and when you DigiXross this turn, you may treat this Digimon as meeting one of those DigiXross requirements. Then on top of that, he has the Material Save 1 ability, and he DigiXrosses for 2, and he has the DigiXross -2 ability with one of our other Cross Hearts traded Digimon. So that means that with his on-play ability, we can return any one of our Cross Hearts Digimon that we want, which is pretty good, and he seems like an obvious card to want to go into that Cross Hearts deck. Then he even has a nice inheritable ability to use when we're Digivolving on top of him or Digicrossing with him, where during your turn, while this Digimon has Shoutmon in its name, then it gets plus 2000 DP. Next, we have the blue Digitama, and that is going to be Baby Demon. So Baby Demon is going to be a pretty good new blue Digitama for us to think about utilizing, because his inheritable ability states that when attacking once per turn, if the opponent has 2 or more Digimon in play, which is kind of the whole sub-theme on what the Blue Flare army is trying to do, then we get to draw 1 card, acting primarily as a draw engine for that deck, but it's just a generically good Digitama for us to use overall for the opponent literally just having Digimon in play. Next, we have Impulse Memory Boost. So Impulse Memory Boost is going to be a new yellow option. It costs 3 to play and has the main ability where we get to play 1 Pulsemon from our hand for free, and then we get to place this card into the battle area to use its other main ability of Delay to gain 2 memory at a later turn, with the security ability like all of the other memory boosts, where we get to place this card into the battle area to use its second main ability of Delay to gain 2 memory at a later turn. So this is just an interesting card to be used in that Pulsemon deck, just because we have Pulsemon in both yellow and green, and this can interact with both of those lines of Pulsemons. And speaking of our Pulsemons, we even have a new version of Pulsemon. So this time Pulsemon is making a return back to yellow. Stats aren't anything too special, but it actually does have the alternative evolution condition where you could Digivolve it on top of any BBmon for 0. So that means you could actually think about utilizing some of the green Pulsemon stuff, and I don't know if Pulsemon is going to extend to any other colors, but that's just something interesting to think about. Then on top of that, he has the ability where during the opponent's turn, while we have 3 or less cards in our security, then this Digimon gains the blocker ability. So it's just a cheap little rookie blocker that we could think about utilizing. This seems to fit more in line with the yellow Pulsemon stuff, but I don't know if they're going to have any cross-color Pulsemon synergies in the future. Next up, we have a new version of Tactimon. So this new version of Tactimon is going to be a Bagra army card, so it wants to be played in the Bagra army, obviously because he was one of the generals in the Bagra army in the show. But this is going to be actually a pretty interesting card to be utilizing. So he is a level 6 purple Digimon, has the stat line where he evos for 4 and has 12,000 DP, and he hard plays for 13, and you could take advantage of all of the different ways that we could utilize level 6s. So if we're trying to hard play him from our hand, because we could start our turn at 3 memory thanks to memory fixing tamers to actually be able to hard play him, then his on-play ability states that we get to play 2 level 4 or lower Digimon with Bagra army in their traits from our trash for free. And then the Digimon played by this effect gain blocker until the end of the opponent's next turn. So this is just an easy way, similar to Piedmon all the way back in BT02, to be able to help flood the field and get extra bodies out, and this actually makes those bodies even better by adding the blocker ability, so we could potentially utilize save and blocker to put them back in underneath one of our tamers to be able to reuse them. Then on top of that, he has an ability that triggers during the opponent's turn. Then when one of your other Digimon's digivolution sources would be trashed, you may instead trash this Digimon's digivolution source instead to try to combo and trigger off of the Bagra army cards to make the Bagra army inheritable abilities useful even for him. Next up, we have a new version of Blasmon. So Blasmon is another one of the generals in the Bagra army, so it's no surprise to see him here, and he is going to be a level 6 Digimon that is both purple and black. Then he could Digivolve for 5 on top of both purple and black with 13,000 DP, which seems really expensive, but he has a slew of different abilities to help him make the card more playable. So he naturally has the rush ability, so whether you Digivolve into him or you hard play him from your hand, if your turn doesn't pass, then you could utilize this rush ability to attack right away with. Then on top of that, he has an on-play ability where if this Digimon has 3 digivolution sources, then it gains the Blitz ability. So that way you could actually use Rush in combination with Blitz to be able to attack the same turn you play him. And then on top of that, his third ability states that during the opponent's turn, once per turn, when one of your opponent's Digimon attacks, you could trash one of your Digimon's digivolution sources to delete one of the opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon. So when he does have the stack, he does have ways of getting rid of his own inheritable abilities to trigger the Bagra army inheritable abilities to do various negative things to the opponent on top of his negative thing, which is going to be deleting the opponent's Digimon, potentially stopping some of their aggression. Next up, we have Gullus Gammamon. So Gammamon, if anyone's caught up on the show or has been watching the show, has lots of different evolutions that he can transform into. So he has one for red, green, and blue respectively translated into the card game, and he even has a dark side that is taking in the form of purple. So what this Gammamon is doing is he is a level 4 purple Digimon that can evo for 3 on top of a level 3, which is a little bit expensive, but he obviously wants to be used in that Gammamon deck where he could Digivolve for 2 on top of a Gammamon. Then, during all turns, while this Digimon has a card with Gammamon in its name in its Digivolution source, then this Digimon gains the Retaliation ability, so it's acting as a really solid threat, not only to try to delete the opponent's Digimon, but to keep him from being deleted and attacked into. Then, on top of that, when he is deleted, his on-delete ability states that you may play one Gammamon from your trash, suspended without paying its memory cost, so when he dies, he'll be able to replace himself with a Gammamon, so that way you could use the Gammamon in various different ways, depending on the Gammamon that you are playing with. Next up, we have Brachiomon. So Brachiomon is going to be a level 5 Digimon in the color combination of blue and black. So this is going to act as a really solid transition Digimon, but stat-wise, this card isn't too bad, evoing for 3 on top of a level 4 black or blue Digimon, and then on top of that, he has 9,000 DP and 6 to hard play, making him a pretty solid transition Digimon to think about utilizing, even though he doesn't have any inheritable abilities himself. Just acting as that transition point might be good enough for what your deck is trying to do. And then the last card that we got revealed is going to be a brand new version of Cherrymon. It probably wants to be played in that vegetation deck just because he is a vegetation. Then on top of that, it seems like they learned their lesson to never have it Digisorption 3 when he evos for 3, and he has Digisorption 2, so with this ability, you're at worst going to have to always be paying 1 to Digivolve up into him. Then, on top of that, he has the ability where during the opponent's turn, once per turn, when your opponent's Digimon attacks, you get to swap the target of the attack to one of your suspended Digimon, forcing them to try to attack your suspended Digimon, which they may not want to be doing, depending on the target that you're going to be switching the attack to. On top of fitting on theme with what the vegetation deck wants to do, which is another deck that's focused around suspending your own Digimon for various benefits, which he's playing very nicely into. But yeah, for the most part, that's all of the spoilers that we had this week. It was another semi-decently large batch, and I'm excited to see the rest of the cards in the set, because we still have some very spicy and exciting cards that we have yet to see. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.